If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
Knicks lived to fight another day. They beat the Miami Heat in Game 5 at Madison Square Garden, 102-103. New York trailed by as much as 10 points in the first quarter after some ghastly shooting. Turned things around in a big way in the second quarter. New York outscored the Heat 36-23 in the second quarter. That was a major shift in this game. Jalen Brunson, who led all scorers in this game, like I said, with a 38.48-minute masterclass, scored 14 points in that second quarter. RJ Barrett scored 10 points in that second quarter. He finished with 26. Julius Randle also started to turn it around in that second quarter. He had a nice bounce back game overall. He had a very poor performance in the first quarter. It looked like it was going to be another disaster class from Randle. He rebounded to come back and finish with 24 points in this one. New York dominated much of the third quarter, coming out of the halftime, pushed leads up to as high as 19. Miami would storm back in the fourth quarter. Duncan Robinson, Kyle Lowry hitting some big threes. They also missed some big threes that would have put Miami tied or ahead in this game down the stretch. Jalen Brunson, another big quarter in the fourth. He had 10 in the fourth quarter. Clutch free throws from Mitchell Robinson, of all people. He went 3 for 4 down the stretch. RJ Barrett had some big free throws to seal the win, and the Knicks continue their season. So the story of this game, of course, has got to begin with Jalen Brunson. When you think of all-time great Knicks performances in the playoffs, does Brunson's rise up to that level with some of the greatest? I know we have guys who've won championships, but when maybe you take those outside of that, where's Brunson's performance ranking in your eyes?
Yeah, I understand the enthusiasm, and he deserves a ton of credit. I probably will hold off on putting it near the very top of the list. This was a game 5 of a second round series in which the Knicks were down 3-1. Huge game, important game. But we're talking about game 7s of NBA finals.
Yeah.
And, even Eastern Conference finals deciding games. I was thinking about Starks on the road going to Indiana in 94. Games like that kind of get lost in the shuffle. But, when you talk about a team making it to the finals and games like that. So, and Grimes' steal was amazing. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But I heard people compare it to, Starks' dunk and Willis, in terms of, Willis limping out of the tunnel and LJ's 4-point play in the grand scheme of things. So try not to be a prisoner of the moment in that respect. But that kind of out of the way, strictly focusing on last night, really impossible to overstate just how much respect Brunson earned from Knicks fans. And again, when you're comparing him to the immortal teams of the 70s and those moments and those games, and even the great teams from the 90s that constantly went to conference finals and the NBA finals, etc. As we know, this team doesn't have many of those type of moments in the last 2 decades, this century,
right?
Which makes Brunson's performance really stand out as well it should. Strictly in terms of numbers, the second player with more than 35 points, more than 6 rebounds, more than 6 assists in a playoff game in Knicks history. The first was the aforementioned Will Clyde Frazier in Game 7 of the 1970 NBA Finals. And it's just it really speaks to how well it was the kind of the culmination of the turnaround of the franchise. And I thought this game was important, and we'll get into it later in the pod, later in the summer. If the Knicks had lost this game, and they were down 24-14 after the first quarter, Randall was a no-show again, was in a zombie mopey mode. It's bizarre, the whole thing. It really, and we talked about it. I thought for sure it was imperative that the Knicks get off to a fast start, coming out of the disaster that was games 3 and 4 Miami. Team seemed flat. And it looked like this thing was really trending in a really terrible direction. The Knicks had lost Game 5. Certainly if they had gotten blown out in Game 5, so much of the positive momentum that they had built up over the first, 6 months, over the past 6 months, obviously all wouldn't be lost. There'd still be so much to take away from, and there'd be lots to be proud of, but it would leave fans with a bitter taste in their mouth heading into the offseason. I think this really puts the Knicks in a much better place overall. And a lot of that has to do with Jalen Brunson. We'll talk about Grimes, another dude who played 48 minutes. Randall bouncing back in the second quarter, end of the second quarter. quarter was huge.
Yeah.
Obi changing the momentum of the game by infusing it with energy was huge. And of course, RJ Barrett for the biggest free throws of his life, the final 2 minutes of a closeout elimination game, knocked down all 4 of them. Mitch making 3 of his final 4 free throws, and 4 of 6 in the fourth quarter when they went to hack a Mitch, deserves a ton of credit. So a lot to discuss, but I think we're definitely right to start with Brunson, as he's been the key piece, kind of the captain and the leader of the ship for the entire season, and he led them out of really troubled waters last night.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I have no problem talking about Brunson's playoff game last night as being an all-timer for the Knicks is because of kind of what you said regarding the fact that this is a team that hasn't had these moments in so long. I almost think, and maybe it's unfair, but I almost think when I think about all-time great performances with this franchise, because so many of them happened so long ago, I think we kind of have to have a different kind of like measuring stick for what's an all-time performance. To me, it's almost like, prior to when the Yankees won in 96, saying, well, every moment happened in the playoffs didn't matter because of what they did, with, Reggie Jackson and Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth and Rogie Berra. At a certain point, you say, look, you got to acknowledge some of these other great performances, even if they didn't result in championships or whatever. In some ways, like these kind of like begin the turn towards maybe a winning kind of stretch, a winning era that Knicks trying to enter. So, yeah,
I'll just counter that quickly by the Jeter flip play on Giambi. What, like, in other words, if the Yankees go on to lose that game, it doesn't matter as much. The reason
you're right.
Is because they went on to win the World Series. So that's why I said let's just see kind of what happens. But I totally understand your point.
Yeah, and that's a fair point as well. But I mean, when I think of Jalen Brunson playing all 48 minutes, which is something that I felt like we didn't talk about, but I felt like was going to be very possible in what we saw the last game, where again, nothing Deuce McBride did wrong, but you just saw the offenses had no chance once he went out there. That a 48-minute performance on an ankle that we now know is like really not good. Like Ian Bagley, shout out to him. He's done some very extensive reporting on the fact that this guy has been getting like 24-hour treatment just to get him out there. Plenty of his games, they didn't think he'd be able to play. So he has that performance for 48 minutes on a bum ankle. And mind you, the Heat are picking him up full court. I mean, this is not like the Heat are allowing him to get into his stuff, or they're not. I mean, they are just hounding him. And to be there last night and see Gabe Vincent in his grill all 94 feet. And for Brunson to do that with your team on the brink of elimination after your team starts off so poorly. I mean, Knicks play the first quarter like a team that was ready to hit Cancun. And for him to say, no, we're not going to Cancun. We're going to go south, but not that far south. We're going back to Miami because I'm going to will you guys to this W. It was special. And it was a special performance being there to watch it. It was a pleasure to be in there to watch that performance from Jalen Brunson. He really kind of cemented himself as a guy that I look at now and say, okay, he's a championship cornerstone. That's what I looked at. That's what I take from this game is regardless of where it ranks amongst the all-time performances, I say, okay, that is a point guard I know I can win a championship with. That guy puts on that performance with your back against the wall, all the pressure in the world given, even though you can say, well, what do they have to lose? Like, they're already down 3-1 and nobody's expecting much from them. It's New York City. It's the Knicks. If they lose that game, I mean, people already want to throw out Randall, want to throw out Tibbs. He would have been fine, but there would have been a lot of heat coming, no pun intended, coming for the Knicks heading into this offseason, despite how good a season it had been. The Knicks had to win that game. And for Brunson to do that under that pressure, that's a guy you can win a championship with.
And that is a major statement, and I couldn't agree more. And having a point guard in today's NBA is incredibly valuable. It's like when you draft a quarterback, you don't know what you're going to get. You take him in the first, second overall pick, Darnold or Zach Wilson, or you get him in the second round, like the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. There's no guarantees out there, but when you see it, you see it. And, obviously, there's a long way to go and a lot of other things that have to happen. And the roster most likely has to be fiddled with and flipped around and changed a little bit here and there. We'll talk about Randall plenty over this offseason. But the Knicks have a foundational cornerstone piece. And look at the last 10, 15, 20 championships, really, going back 30, 40 years, if you don't have a quality point guard, it's very, very difficult to win an NBA championship, unless you have a LeBron James type who is essentially served as a point guard for the majority of teams that he played for. Steph Curry's and going down the list, even the Bucks with Drew Holiday was an essential piece.
Yeah, Tony Parker with the Spurs.
Enormous, all Duncan and Manu and all those guys were key pieces. But Parker was the tone setter, got the offense, it facilitated the offense. It's imperative to find it. The Knicks found it. I would be lying if I wasn't chuckling to myself after the game ended last night, thinking about Mark Cuban somewhere in Texas and Doncic somewhere in Slovenia watching the game, just shaking their head, being like, "What happened? Like, what did we do?" But another man's one person's mistake is the Knicks fans' gold at the end of the tunnel. So, and Knicks fans know that more than anyone else. So we've talked about it ad infinitum. All the struggles at point guard position, to have Brunson in a Knicks uniform. I tweeted at like 2:00. There was a pregame presser after the Brunson and I think it was Barrett, a couple other guys talked to the media after Wednesday morning shoot around.
Yeah.
And Barrett's quote, they asked him about the pressure of playing in a Game 5, potentially a season ending. And his response was, "We worked all off season. Players worked their entire lives to get to a moment like this." And I just tweeted, it's like, the Knicks have a chance to win 3 straight games miraculously, advance to the Eastern Conference Finals because of Jalen Brunson. And if they do it, it'll probably be because of Jalen Brunson. And my God, did he deliver? And it was because of Jalen Brunson that we're here discussing a Game 5 victory and looking forward to a Game 6.
And I think, I want to get to RJ too in a second, but I think the reason why I'm so excited about this Brunson performance and why I say this guy is a championship cornerstone is now this guy is a postseason player. Like, any thought that what you saw last season in the postseason and what was somewhat like, he played great the whole postseason, but that time when Johnson was out, kind of a limited time where you got to see him kind of explode against the Utah Jazz, you say, okay, maybe that was just Utah Jazz. It's like, now we know when it comes to the ranking the best postseason players in the NBA, Jalen Brunson is probably in that top 10. He has to be at this point. So when you got that kind of player who, when the chips are down and you need big moments, you need big performances that this guy consistently delivers. You mentioned the Derek Jeter comparison, which you've made a lot during this entire season. That's what I see when I watch Jalen Brunson. It may not be a top 10 player in a regular season, but when it's playoff time, this guy is money. And he was, again, just nails last night. Again, 48 minutes, 1 turnover. There were a lot of other guys had a lot of turnovers. They had 18 for the game, and that was a problem. But 1 turnover from your point guard, you can survive, honestly, a lot of those other turnovers if your point guard who's running the ball that much and taking the ball, carrying the ball that much, isn't turning it over. So, again, I can't say enough about Jalen Brunson's performance, but thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest podcast ventures. Links will be in the descriptions. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.